I'm making this video on Sunday, October 27th. By now, you probably have guessed we're only 9 days away from the election. And as you can see, today, I just voted. Obviously, because we know what the stakes are. But apparently, there are a lot of people out there who don't understand what the stakes are, who think this is just another election, who thinks that this too shall pass, that this election will just fade away. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to do what I told myself I wouldn't have to do. I'm going to remind people as to who and what Donald Trump was during his first 4 years of being a president, and why I voted today. I stood in line for almost 2 hours at my clerk of courts in my county here in Ohio. I stood in line for 2 hours in a very hot, very warm place, standing in line for 2 hours to vote for Kamala Harris. Take a listen and get comfortable, because the next 20-25 minutes are going to be uncomfortable for you when you listen to what I have to say. The reason why I'm not voting for Trump, because of the first 4 years. This is why. He incited an insurrection against the government, mismanaged a pandemic that killed nearly 500,000 Americans, separated children from their families, lost those children in the bureaucracy, tear-gassed peaceful protesters on Lafayette Square so he can hold a photo op holding a Bible in front of a church, tried to block all Muslims from entering the country, got impeached twice, had the worst job record of any president in modern history, pressured Ukraine to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, fired the FBI director for investigating his ties to Russia, bragged about firing the FBI director on television, took the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the intelligence community of this country, diverted military funding to build his border wall that was never finished, caused the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, called Black Lives Matter a symbol of hatred, lied 30,000 times to the American people, banned transgendered people from serving in the U.S. military, ejected reporters from the White House briefing room who asked him tough questions, vetoed the military defense funding bill because it renamed military bases who were then named for Confederate soldiers, refused to release his tax returns, increased the national debt by nearly $8 trillion, had the 3 highest annual trade deficits in U.S. history, called veterans and soldiers who fought and died in combat suckers and losers, coddled the leader of Saudi Arabia after he ordered the execution and dismembering of a U.S.-based journalist, refused to concede the 2020 election after he lost, hired his unqualified daughter and son-in-law to work in the White House, walked out of an interview with CBS's Leslie Stahl, called neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan who marched in Charlottesville, Virginia, very fine people, suggested that people should inject bleach into their bodies to fight the COVID-19 virus, abandoned our allies to the Kurds in Turkey, pushed through massive tax cuts for the wealthy but balked at helping working Americans, incited anti-lockdown protesters in several states at the height of the pandemic, one of which led to a kidnapping plot of Michigan's governor, withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Accords, withdrew us from the Iran nuclear deal, withdrew us from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is designed to block Chinese advances, insulted his own cabinet members on Twitter, pushed the leader of Montenegro out of the way during a photo op, failed to reiterate U.S. commitment to defending NATO allies, called the Haitian and African nations shithole countries, called the city of Baltimore, Maryland, the worst in the nation, claimed that he single-handedly brought back the phrase Merry Christmas, although it never gone anywhere, forced his cabinet members to praise him like some sort of cult leader, believed he should have been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which he didn't earn, berated and belittled his hand-picked attorney general when he recused himself from the Russian probe, suggested that the United States should brine Greenland, colluded with Mitch McConnell to push through federal judges and 2 Supreme Court justices after supporting efforts to prevent his predecessor, Barack Obama, from appointing judges, repeatedly called the media, the U.S. media, enemies of the people, claimed that if we tested fewer people for COVID, we have fewer cases, violated the Emoluments Clause multiple times, thought that Nairobi was a country, told Bob Woodward in private that Corona was a big deal, but then downplayed it in public, calling it exceedingly faithful vice president a pussy, following the Constitution. Nearly got us into war with Iran after threatening them with a tweet, nominating a corrupt head of the EPA, nominating a corrupt head of the HHS, nominating a corrupt head of the Interior Department, nominating a corrupt head of the USDA, praised dictators and authoritarians around the world while criticizing allies, refused to allow the presidential transition to begin, insulted a war hero, John McCain, even after his death, spent an obscene amount of time playing golf after criticizing Barack Obama for playing far less golf while president, falsely claimed that he won the 2016 popular vote, called the Muslim mayor of London a stone-cold loser after a terrorist attack, falsely claimed that he turned down being Time magazine's Man of the Year, considered firing Special Counsel Robert Mueller on several occasions, mocked the wearing of face masks to guard against transmitting COVID, locked Congress out of doing its constitutional duty to confirm cabinet members by hiring acting ones, used a racist dog whistle by calling COVID the China virus, hired and associated with numerous shady figures that were eventually convicted of federal offenses, including his campaign manager and national security advisor, pardoned several of his shady associates, gave the Presidential Medal of Freedom to 2 congressmen who amplified his conspiracy theories, got into a telephone fight with the leader of Australia. He had a Secretary of State who called him a moron, forced his press secretary to claim, without merit, that his was the largest inauguration crowd in American history, botched the COVID vaccine rollout, tweeted so much dangerous propaganda that Twitter eventually banned him, charged the Secret Service with jack-up rates at his properties, constantly interrupted Joe Biden during their first presidential debate in 2020, claimed that COVID would magically disappear, called a United States Senator Pocahontas, used his Twitter account to blast Nordstrom when it stopped selling Ivanka Trump's merchandise, opened up 1 million pristine federal lands to development and drilling, got into a losing tariff war with China that forced the U.S. taxpayers to bail out farmers, claimed that his losing tariff war was a win for the United States, ignored or didn't even take part of daily intelligence briefings, blew off honoring American war dead in France because it was raining, redesigned Air Force One to look like a Trump show, got played by Kim Jong-un and his love letters, threatened to go out after social media companies in clear violation of the Constitution, botched the response to Hurricane Mara in Puerto Rico, threw paper towels at the survivors when he valiantly visited them, pressured the governor and the Secretary of State of Georgia to find him votes after losing the election, thought that the Virgin Islands had a president, not knowing it was a U.S. territory, drew on a map with a Sharpie to justify his inaccurate tweet that Alabama was threatened by a hurricane, allowed White House staff to use personal email accounts for official business after blasting Hillary Clinton for doing the same, rolled back regulations that protected the public from mercury and apoptosis, pushed regulators to waste time studying snake oil remedies for COVID, rolled back regulations that stopped coal companies from dumping waste into rivers, held blatant campaign rallies at the White House, tried to take away millions of Americans' health care insurance because the law was named after a black man, obviously former President Barack Obama, refused to attend his successor's inauguration, nominated the worst education secretary in history, threatened judges who did not do what he wanted, attacked Dr. Anthony Fauci, promised that Mexico would pay for the wall. It didn't. Allowed political hacks to overrule government scientists on major reports on climate change and other issues. Struggled navigating a ramp after claiming that his opponent was feeble. Called an African-American congresswoman low IQ. Threatened to withhold federal aid from states and cities with Democratic leaders. Went ahead with rallies filled with massive supporters in the middle of a pandemic. Claimed that the legitimate investigations of his wrongdoing were witch hunts. Seemed to demonstrate a belief that there were airports during the Revolutionary War. Demanded total loyalty from the FBI director. Praised a conspiracy theory that Democrats are satanic pedophiles, completely gutted the voice of America, placed a political hack in charge of the Postal Service, and claimed without any evidence the Obama administration bugged his Trump Tower. Suggested that the United States should allow more people from Norway into the country. Suggested that COVID wasn't that bad because he recovered with the help of top government doctors and treatments not available to the public. Overturned energy conservation standards that even industry supported. Reduced the number of refugees that the United States accepted. Insults various members of Congress and the media with infantile nicknames. Gave Rush Limbaugh a Presidential Medal of Freedom at the State of the Union address. Named as the head of the federal personnel a 29-year-old who previously been fired from the White House for allegations of financial improprieties. Eliminated the White House Office of the Pandemic Response. Used soldiers as campaign props. Fired any advisor who made the mistake of disagreeing with them. Demanded that the Pentagon throw him a Soviet-style, North Korean-style, China-style military parade on July 4th. Hired a shit ton of white nationalists. Publicized the civil service. And did absolutely nothing about what after Russia hacked the United States government. Falsely said that the Boy Scouts called him to say his bizarre jamboree speech was the best ever given to the Scouts. Claimed that black people would overrun the suburbs if Biden won. Insulted reporters of color. Insulted women reporters. Insulted women reporters of color. Suggested that he was fine with China's operation of the Ungans. Attacked the Supreme Court when it ruled against him. Summoned Pennsylvania state legislative leaders to the White House to pressure them to overturn the election. Spent countless hours a day watching Fox News. Refused to allow his administration to comply with congressional subpoenas. Hired Rudy Giuliani as a lawyer. tried to punish Amazon because the Jeff Bezos-owned Washington Post wrote negative stories about him. Acted as if the Attorney General of the United States was his own personal attorney. Attempted to get the federal government to defend him in a libel lawsuit from a woman who accused him of sexual assault. Held private meetings with Vladimir Putin without a staff present. Didn't disclose those private meetings with Vladimir Putin, so we in the United States had to find out via Russian media. Stopped holding press conferences and briefings for months at a time. Ordered United States companies to leave China, even though he had no such power to do so. Led a political party that couldn't be even more bothered to draft a policy platform, claimed purposely that Article 2 of the Constitution gave him absolute powers. It doesn't. Tried to pressure the UK to hold the British Open as golf course. Suggested that the government nuke hurricanes. Suggested that wind turbines cause cancer. Suggested that he had a special aptitude with science. He doesn't. Pay attention to this one. Fired the head of the election cybersecurity after he said that the 2020 election was secure. Blurred out classified information to the Russian officials. Tried to force the G7 to hold their meeting at his failing golf resort in Florida. Fired the acting attorney general when she refused to go along with his unconstitutional Muslim travel ban. Hired Stephen Miller, an open white supremacist. Openly disclosed national security issues at the dining table room in Mar-a-Lago, where everyone can hear them and see them. Interfered with plans to relocate the FBI because a new development might compete with this hotel. Abandoned Iraqi refugees who helped the United States during the war. Tried to get Russia back into the G7. Held a super spreader event in the Rose Garden. Seemed to believe that Frederick Douglass is still alive. Lost 60 election fraud cases in court, including before judges that he had nominated. Falsely claimed that the factories were reopening when they weren't. Shamelessly exploited terror attacks in Europe to justify his anti-immigrant policies. Still has not come up with a health care plan, just concepts of a plan. Still hasn't come up with an infrastructure plan despite repeated infrastructure weeks. Forced Secret Service agents to drive him around Walter Reed Hospital while contagious with COVID. Told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by in the 2020 presidential debate. Screwed up the census. Withdrew the United States from the World Health Organization in the middle of a pandemic. Did so few of his duties that his press staff were forced to state on his daily schedule that President Trump will work from the early morning until the late evening. He will make many calls and have many meetings, they would say, according to his staff. Allowed his staff to violate repeatedly the Hatch Act. Seemed not to know that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Stood before the sacred CIA Wall of Heroes and bragged about his election win. Constantly claimed he was treated worse than any president, which presumably includes the 4 who were assassinated and his predecessor, whose legitimacy and birthplace were challenged by a racist reality television show host named Donald Trump. Claimed that Andrew Jackson could have stopped the Civil War, even though he died 16 years before the war began. Said that any opinion poll showing him losing was fake. Claimed that other countries laughed at us before he became president when several world leaders were literally laughing at him. Claimed that the U.S. military was out of ammunition before he became president. Created a commission to whitewash American history. Retweeted anti-Islam photos from one of the most one of the most racist people in Britain, claimed ludicrously that the Pulse nightclub shooting wouldn't have happened if someone there had a gun, even though there was armed security there. Hired a senior staffer who cited the non-existent Bowling Green massacre as a reason to ban Muslims. Had a press secretary who claimed that the Nazi Germany never used chemical weapons, even though every sane human being knows they used gas to kill millions of Jews and others. Built the Secret Service for higher market rates when they had to stay in Trump properties, and apparently sold pardons on his way out of the White House in 2021. Stripped protective status from 59,000 Haitians, falsely claiming that Biden wanted to defund the police, said that the head of the CDC didn't know what he was talking about. Tried to rescind protection for Dreamers. Give himself an A+ for his handling of the pandemic when it's really an F. Tried to start a boycott of Goodyear tires due to an internet hoax. Said the U.S. rates of COVID would be lower if you didn't count blue states. Deported U.S. veterans who served their country but were undocumented. Claimed he did more for African Americans than any other president since Lincoln. Touted the super-duper secret hydrosonic missile, which may or may not be a new hypersonic missile or may not exist at all. Retweeted a GIF calling Biden a pedophile. Forced security clearances for his family. Suggested police officers should rough up suspects. Suggested that Biden was on performance-enhancing drugs. Tried to stop transgender students from being able to use school bathrooms in line with their gender. Suggested that the United States not accept COVID patients from a cruise ship because it would make U.S. numbers look higher. Nominated a climate change skeptic to the chair of the climate advising to the White House on environmental policy. Retweeted a video thought to look like Biden had played a song of "Fuck the Police" at a campaign event. Hugged a disturbingly large number of U.S. flags. Accused Democrats of treason for not applauding him during the State of the Union address. Claimed that the FBI failed to capture the Parkland school shooter because they were spending too much time on Russia. Mocked the testimony of Dr. Christine Baisley Ford when she accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. Obsessed over low-flow toilets. Ordered the release of more COVID vaccines when there were none to be released at all. Called for the construction of a bizarre garden of heroes with statues from famous dead Americans, as well as at least one Canadian, Alex Trebek. Hijacked July 4th celebrations to give a partisan speech, took advice from the My Pillow guy, claimed that migrants who were seeking a better life in the United States were dangerous caravans of drug dealers and rapists. Said nothing when Vladimir Putin posed a leading opposition figure. Never seemed to heed the advice of his wife's Be Best campaign. Falsely claimed that mail-in voting is fraudulent. Announced a precipitous withdrawal of troops from Syria, which not only handed Russia and ISIS a win, but also prompted his defense secretary to resign his position. Insulted the leader of Canada, insulted the leader of France, insulted the leader of Britain, the leader of Germany, the leader of Sweden. Sweden! Falsely claimed credit for gang nail members to increase their share of dues. Blew off 2 Asian summits that even though they were held virtually. Continuously lying about spending lots of time at ground zero with 9/11 first responders. Said that the Japanese would sit back and watch their sorry televisions if the United States were ever attacked. Left the NATO summit early in a huff. Stared directly into an eclipse, even though everyone over the age of 5 knows not to do that. Calling himself a very stable genius despite significant evidence to the contrary. Refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power and kept his promise. And a whole lot of stuff that I can't remember at the moment. You are willing to sit there and let this happen? This is the kind of country, the kind of leader you want back in the White House? This is the authoritarian that you're willing to risk our lives, our freedoms, on? You want to keep this guy in office so he can do more damage to the country than he already did? If you sit there for the next 9 days and you just sit there and say, whatever happens, happens, or just twiddle your thumbs and pretend it's not real, you've enabled that to happen, just as you did in 2016. If you sit there and let this happen, whose fault is it going to be? Not really Donald Trump's, although part of me thinks he's going to cheat. He was taught from a very young age that the rules don't apply to him. He was taught from a young age to blame everyone else for his failings. He was taught from a young age to do whatever it takes to win. And if you lose, claim victory anyway, even though you know you lost. This is the time for us to stop this insanity, because those flags that are fluttering in the breeze behind me, they will mean absolutely nothing if Donald Trump comes back into power. Donald Trump has made his intentions abundantly clear as to what he wants to do to this country and its people. People like me. You think my name is on some sort of list of his? Saying that I'm a threat because I didn't vote for him? Saying I'm a threat because I don't bow to him? Saying I'm a threat because I donated $20 to him? Bucks to Kamala Harris, the Harris campaign? You already heard him say he's going to have people prosecuted because they donated to him. If that's not a Hilarian threat, I don't know what is. And at this point, right now, if you're willing to just sit back and let this all happen, let this all go down, then you are the problem in this country. You are responsible for what might happen in this country. This is the time of the week, the time in the last 4 years, and especially now, in which the wannabe dictators want to take over this country. They're here. They're doing nothing but appealing to the proudly ill-informed, the proudly uneducated, the proudly stupid, and the proudly corrupt. Donald Trump has made all their dreams come true because of people like Elon Musk, who has had contact with Vladimir Putin and is probably plotting to take this country down, all for the sake of Donald Trump and Putin. And if no other factor at this stage of the game tells you to get out and vote, get out and persuade others to vote for Kamala Harris, regardless of how you feel about her political stances, regardless of how you feel about the last 3 years, whether you hate her, whether you you just don't like her, whether you feel like she's the devil or something else. She is a damn better sight than what Donald Trump his plans for our country. He's made clear what his plans are for the nation. And if no other factor gets you out there ready to vote for Harris, to do what I did, stand in line on a Sunday and early vote for Kamala Harris, stand in line for over 2 hours in a huge line that stretches all the way from the street, going inside a hot building, talking to people you never even talked to, talking to people who probably are Donald Trump supporters, who probably hate your guts if they saw my button. Now, I didn't wear this button in line by putting it on for the purposes of this video. But if no other factor gets you out there talking to people, knocking on doors, sending emails, making phone calls, making the plan to vote for the next 9 days, if there's nothing else that gets you out there and shake up the apathetic in this country, There is a clip of an interview between a recent interview, mind you, Donald Trump and Joe Rogan that you all need to hear.
Well, I also
we're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not. And they go crazy.
Right. It doesn't mean he's not evil, or it doesn't mean he's not
of course not.
dangerous.
But actually, we have evil people in our country.
Yeah.
Again, praising a dictator while downgrading our country. Now, there's another clip out there.
We're a dumping ground. We're like a garbage can for the world. That's what's happened. That's what's happened to we're like a garbage can. It's the first time I've ever said that. And every time I come up and talk about what they've done to our country, I get angrier and angrier. First time I've ever said garbage can, but you know what? It's a very accurate description.
Him calling our country a trash can country, all because they're illegal immigrants here, all because they see that as a pathway to a better life, a better future, if not for themselves, but for their country. Calling our country, calling that a trash can country, for the real patriots out there, the people who want to fly that flag outside their homes, for the people who want to say that I'm red, white, and blue, the people who have flags clamped on their vehicles. Donald Trump has downgraded this country again. So give me a reason, make it make sense to me. Regardless of how you feel about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, make it make sense as to why you're going to vote for a man who hates our country, who obviously hates it, and who said he hates it over and over and over and over and over again, over a person who wants to work for our country, who wants to represent that. Make it make sense to me. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Because there is no sense in that at all. If you listen to what I said in this video about the 4 years of Donald Trump as president, you would know that Donald Trump doesn't represent that. He cares about himself and anything that makes him more money. And damn everything else and damn everyone else in this country to hell if it was up to him. 9 days, ladies and gentlemen. 9 days. Well, right now I uploaded this video on Monday, so it's now 8 days. 8 days left to decide where this country is going. Freedom with Kamala Harris or fascism with Donald Trump. You decide. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left, justice to the right.